Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Hampus Jakobsson. He's a general partner at Pale Blue Dot. Hampus, welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm always excited to chat with you. You always have a ton of really good content. And so, but maybe before we get into all the stuff that you're doing now and some of the other things I want to talk about today, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Well, this is now. It has to be like a 9-hour podcast soon. I think if I try to package this in like 5 minutes or something, which is a hard exercise for me even, I would say I grew up in southern Sweden. I grew up in a kind of a very science family. Both of my parents, are originally scientists in different fields, genetics and physics. And then both of them ended up after a while being teachers. And then my two oldest brothers are a professor in abstract mathematics. So, and they're a lot older than me, all these people. So the thing is that I kind of grew up as like, I had technically more or less 5 parents as a kid and roamed them out and could do kind of like a bit of anything. Because when you have 3 older brothers, they've already, tried and tested every single stupid thing you can try. So it was amazing for like discovery. And my parents are very kind of chill or laissez-faire or whatever you want to call it. So it was like I just tried and tested a lot of stuff and got into computers pretty early, really enjoyed that, and then bumped into a couple of friends who were coding early computers or even kind of consoles, and kind of did stuff with them without having licenses. So like if you get a old Nintendo console or an Xbox thing, you need to pay multiple 10Ks to Microsoft, or used to be at least, to build an app. And so what we did is like we circumvented that, and then of course we didn't build a whole game, but just build something funky on a Nintendo. And then we started competing with that internationally, and I'm one of those people, which is amazing because I think one tricky thing when you're young, it's really hard to figure out a craft.
Sure.
Well, I think that's like for a long time in your life, it's hard to figure out a craft. I find so many times it's like you don't actually know what to do. Like it's like if somebody says, can you help me? It's like most of the time, I think most people feel, yeah, with what? Like what can I do? What craft can I do? Kind of thing. But luckily enough to kind of bump into that, got into programming quite a lot, really enjoyed that. And then at uni, I had this obsession where every single summer I went and did a job in another country. And the first job I kind of tricked myself into a bit, which was great because then I got to France, got to work in Paris, and super ambitious job, and like really opened up my mind. Then I went and worked at an art studio in London, which was great. Then I worked in Munich at an automotive simulation company. So just like, got to see the world and got to see a lot of different jobs, honestly, which was great because then, you get to see all kinds of company sizes and everything. And then the London company was very inspiring because they did arts, and this was like year 2000. So you got actually paid quite a lot for arts. Kind of like now when you like NFTs, you could get patient close, which I think I didn't get. That was a blip. I mean, now maybe the blip is back, but at least there were 20 years of not getting paid for arts. So we started a like tech arts company where we were planning to do arts installations to get paid, and got 1 gig, which was great. And then randomly started a company on that, which was about getting stuff on screens on mobile phones. Very, very long story short, got into that completely randomly, no plan whatsoever. It was not what we planned to do. And then when we sort of got into that, we scaled from the 6 friends to 180 people, offices in Sweden, in Korea and Seoul, Japan, in Tokyo then, and Taipei, Taiwan, Chicago, US, and San Francisco, US.
That's amazing.
And just scale this company completely organically. We didn't have any venture capital or anything because, I mean, hey, we started an arts company. This is not the thing. And also we started like 2000, 2001 when, I mean, it was like a plague in the venture market. So nobody wanted to give anybody money. Then when we scaled that company, we're 180 people. Then out of nowhere just comes BlackBerry, And we had Motorola, Samsung, Sony Ericsson, Nokia, Google, a lot of these like big players as customers, and a couple of other like big brand names. But we had never met BlackBerry at all. And this was like 2010 was like BlackBerry was like just ultra peak. They were just like one of the I think 29 was probably their crazy peak. They were just like the most impressive smartphone company in the world. We met them and they kind of reached out to us and said, hey, we want to acquire you. Yeah, like we're just, what the heck's going on? We were like, I don't think you want to acquire us. We're hundreds of people, offices everywhere. Like, because we don't have venture money, we have integration services. We have this, like an in-house, like almost design agency. It's just like, we're just a mess. Cause like, when you build a company organic, you just, you build it very differently. You're not building it to fit into someone else at all. Not that you should do that when you're a venture company, but when you're a venture company, you tend to be slightly more kind of lean
Right.
on some functions. But we didn't. I mean, we had everything. So then they kind of said, "Hey, we want to acquire you." We were kind of weirded out. They called us, and I was jogging. I was actually into barefoot jogging at the time, really like pacing my step and doing cadence running and stuff. Called me when I was running on the beach, and I was like, "What the like pick up the phone. It's like, yeah, hello, Hampus Jakobsson. It's like this guy's like, hello, my name is Chris. I'm calling from BlackBerry, Research in Motion. I would love to talk to you about acquiring your company, TAT. And I was like, whoa, what? Sorry? And then I just stopped running immediately, of course, and like walked there on the beach and talked to this guy. And he was like super nice. He's Canadian. He's like, obviously super nice. Had this great conversation. I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, Chris, like this is super cool. I don't think you want to acquire us because like we're kind of like we're like offices in Korea, like we're quite a mess and certainly, but like, hey, I mean, I'd love to talk to you and love to figure this out. And he was like, yeah, today's Wednesday. Do you want to set up a call like 2 p.m. your time, 8 a.m. Our time, Friday morning? I was like, yeah, sure, that's great. Like, happy to do so. What do you want to go through? He was like, I want to figure out the prowess of your product, your user interface framework. And I don't know if you've seen our video. We've done this thing. We're making a tablet. So like, check that out, and you can like see what we're thinking. I was like, cool, sure. Hung up the phone, and I was like, okay. Got back, called one of my colleagues, and it's like, I don't think they're gonna acquire us. I mean, we had this before and people said that and then they became a customer. But we said, like as usual, we just like, let's throw ourselves at it and really show, what we can do so that we get them as a customer because they're a big company. Got into work this next morning, went into the prototyping team, said, hey, we checked this video for BlackBerry, they're making this tablet. And like one of the guys looks and is like, this is all like a mock-up. They've never built this. It's obviously a mock-up. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Do you want to like implement this, everything you see in this video? We're like, yeah, till when? Friday, 2 p.m. They're like, yeah, that's going to be a stretch. Like we have to throw out just a couple of things, but we can do it. 3 people is what we need. I was like, chill, you get 3 people. Cool. Like they were like, what is it? Yeah, BlackBerry, potentially customer. And that's what I thought, right? Like I would think something else. There was some kind of butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, maybe something more, but I didn't really think so. So then come Friday, we prepped really well because we wanted some customer come into this meeting, show this, like we said, hey, do you have an iPad? They were, yeah. We're sending over like an iPad file that you can, put on your iPad. Back then, you had to kind of make that, it was a bit complicated. Send them a file, they uploaded it. We're like, yeah, okay, great. You can just check out the UI now and hopefully you're gonna recognize some of the BlackBerry stuff and we try to make it, look good. And we know, of course, know the hardware specs of the thing you're building, but I mean, the iPad is not that crazy good. The iPad back in 2010 wasn't that impressive. And the guys were like, yeah, great. And then they just muted. And we were like, oh, now we insult them. Like now they're out. And we're just like, this is what happens sometimes actually. It happened to us before. And usually like it means that, they're gonna say, thanks, this is great, bye, and then they hang up and then they call you back in a couple of months because they realize they can't make it themselves. This has happened with Google and a couple of others. So like they were silent for a minute and then suddenly like somebody came back and like people were talking in the background. This one guy was like, hey, and my name is David. Hey, we're here. It's just like we're talking, guys. I'm like, yeah, no worries at all. And then he just muted again. And then like another 2 minutes silence. And then they suddenly got back like everybody's silent. We're like, hey, could you be in Toronto on Monday morning? And we're like, yeah, sure. Like, what is it about? We would like to go a bit deeper, but we would also like to acquire a company. I was like, oh, like, yeah. And we were like, this is probably going to become a customer, as I said. So like, we were like, okay, sure. Do you want to have a Q&A now? They're like, no, we have a couple of basic questions. We're going to send you our question pack. Can you answer that over the weekend? We're like, sure. Send a bunch of questions, very, very easy questions, like, who owns the company and blah, blah, blah. Like, are there open litigations towards the company? Or we were like, nope. Answer like, quick kind of Word document, send it back. They're like, great. Then one of my co-founders and I felt like we can't fly there and kind of say that there's an acquisition going on, because everybody's going to be so spooked. Because now, I mean, they're kind of inviting us, they've seen the stuff, and we can't really fly there and saying they're a customer either, because we have a US sales team. So they would go like, yeah, they want to join us, and that's going to be super awkward. So we're like, how do we do this? So we're like, I mean, like, 5% probability this is going to become kind of, like M&A, but 95 or whatever, 80% they're going to be a customer, and the other 15, they're just going to not become anything. So we're like, okay, let's see. So then we said like, hey, let's just call in sick. So let's just like not make a thing out of this. So Sunday evening comes, we of course book tickets, right? So like Sunday evening came, we like, called the like register, we're sick, both of us, and then just like got on the plane,
Wow.
flew to Toronto, got off, got to them, was met up by Don Lindsay. We're like, Don Lindsay, I recognize his name. And I realized like in the car, it was like, yeah, my name is Don Lindsay, like this big Canadian guy. Started talking to him, is like, weren't you like part of Apple pretty early? It was like, yeah, I designed OS X. And like, when Steve Jobs came in, he just tossed out every single designer. And I said, you're doing a wrong thing if you're tossing me out.
Wow.
Give me a week to prove it. And then Steve Jobs kept me. And then I kind of did the first prototype of OS X using kind of Flash or Flash prototype at least. And then he said, hey, you're going to do this. And we're like, shit, we're sitting here in a car. Like, this guy picked us at the airport. We're like, what the hey? Like driving to their office, and he was just sitting there talking, super nice guy, but like we were just like, semi starstruck. And the thing is, we had worked with all these huge companies, right? Like before, but the thing is, like, they didn't usually pick up like at the airport kind of level from these kind of people. So we're sitting there, and we come into the office, and we come into like their, the kind of ivory tower HQ kind of building. Come in, Mike Lazaridis comes. Mike Lazaridis is this like big, huge, imposing. I mean, he's like huge guy, like super tall, looks like really like incredible. Like I was like, hey, my name is Mike Lazaridis. I founded this place, but yeah, don't make a thing out of this. Like shakes your hand, and we're like, holy, like this guy is. He's something. And again, we were used to these things, but there was something in the room. We felt the vibe. Turned around, and we're in the management team room, and their whole management is room.
Wow.
We're just sitting, and like we're staring at like 15 people. We're like, okay. And then Mike says, yeah, so we're gonna go. We just checked out different softwares for the BlackBerry platform, and we really like what Adobe's building. But then some people on the team say we should check out you. And I kind of just felt, oh my God, we've flown to Toronto. Like they're checking out it. I was like, and I almost felt in the military. I was like, can I speak freely? I didn't say exactly that, but I kind of felt that. I was like, oh my God. Like, can we say what we think about this? He was like, yeah. So like we just took the whiteboard, Michael and I, like my co-founder and we just started drawing, and like this is what Adobe does. This is how it works. Like if you want to get a pixel on a screen with Adobe, this is what happens. Like when you actually get one red pixel and one blue and whatever. And then this is what we work. And we like went back and forth. And then this guy, this huge, I mean, super incredible CEO of a massive 17,000 people company listed on NASDAQ. He had these questions that were like razor sharp. He was like, yeah, but now when you're drawing that, you're not including video RAM. And we were like, no, that's true. We're simplifying this. Okay, yeah, we can add the video RAM. Like adding the video RAM. And he was like, yeah, but like, are you now thinking of screens that are not necessarily 565 screens? No, of course. No. Like, we can have an alpha channel as well. We just like, and this guy's like, holy, like this is the CEO of a company. He knows all these details about screens. And he just started mangling us for 20 minutes. We're like, holy moly, what's going on? And then like, we kind of felt, it doesn't matter. We're just going back to the airport. So like, why not just teach them what's wrong with the way they're thinking? And that's like how we usually did it. We were like, just, we're not doing sales. We're just going to tell you how it works and go out and get Adobe and, talk to you later. And then after 20 minutes, like Mike says, hey, can you join me in my office? Like, yeah, sure. If that's what works for you. And like, I'm gonna be here till 4 p.m. So whatever. So like walks into his office, was your first next door to the massive like management room. He says like, looks at Waterloo University, like, yeah, there's the computer science department. And Michael, my co-founder, was like, yeah, I actually did it like a year there. They start talking about that. Like, there's the quantum computing center. I actually funded that. I'm really proud. It's really cool. Started talking, and I'm like feeling, what the heck is going on? And then Mike turns around and is like, so some people in my management are like, they don't really get it. And I was like, they don't get it. Like Adobe will never work. Never work. Thanks for the show you did in there. That was amazing. We just stare at this guy like, what? I was like, this is perfect. So we'd love to. What's your turnover next year? What do you think it's going to be? We're like, next year, like 35 million euros ish. He was like, okay, what if we acquire you for $150 million next year? Sorry, what if you acquire $150 million like now? And I'm like, what? Sorry? Yeah, I was thinking like I want all this to get done quickly. So in 6 weeks, I want you to have like BlackBerry business cards and be part of the team and like no fuss. We're just looking at these guys like 150 million. And we're like, what? Yeah, $150 million, 6 weeks. We're just like, no fuss. Like, yeah, like I mean, we can't speak for the whole company, right? But like, okay, cool. Do you have a corporate finance company? Like, no, no, not okay. Let's just like let's figure out. We're sending your term sheet. Get a corporate finance company. We'll just negotiate it quickly with them, and then we're figuring stuff out. Like, what the heck is going on? Like, we go like essentially we go out and like say hi, and then he comes into points to this guy Chris who called me. He's like, hey Chris, so we kind of talked about this. We're looking at like $150 million, but this gotta be swift. And Chris is like, yes, of course. Great. Do you want to ride him to the airport? Like, sorry guys, I gotta go to another thing. We're like, no worries. He goes away. Chris goes to us to the airport. And we have dinner with him at the airport, like talk stuff through, and then we get an airplane. We're like, okay, I mean, this was just too weird. And then we land, and like I pick up my phone on the airport, Copenhagen Airport, where I'm close to. Pick up the phone, check my email. I was like, we got a term sheet. We got a term
Wow.
sheet. Like I've got a term sheet in my box. We got a term sheet for $150 million. What the heck just happened? And then like we've called the head of the board, and it's like saying what's going on. We figured out quickly like how to respond to it. 6 weeks later, we're BlackBerry.
Amazing.
And like it was just really wild. Like, it was just so crazy that. And then when you got on the inside, I ended up running part of M&A for them. And then I kind of asked my colleagues like, how did that go? And they were like, it was a neck-breaking process. It was totally lunatic. Mike had decided like what happened 1 week before is that the head of design, so John Don Lindsay had come into a management meeting and say, we cannot build. Like, I cannot see the engineering team building what I want to build in the UI. And
Wow.
then the engineering manager just stood up and like, no, SVP engineering at BlackBerry was like, yeah, I agree. Like, there's no way. I think this is what you're designing, Don, is unrealistic. And then Don was like, no, but this is like, if you want to look like and feel like Apple, this is not unrealistic. This is what it is. And then Mike just interrupted both of them. Said, hey guys, I need this fixed. He pointed to Chris, like, the M&A guy, said, hey, can you just look at what we can buy? And Chris was like, yeah, what's the budget? I don't care. What's the timeline?
Wow.
Now. But the funny thing is, like, when Mike said $150 million, the craziest thing was like, because we had no realism, we had no VC or anything, right? For us, it was like we could probably have said 250, and this guy would have been like, sure. So like, it was just so nuts that we just stood there and were like, okay. And I felt like I was 12 years old or something. But it was great. And then I worked for BlackBerry for almost 2 years. Learned a lot. Learned about M&A, which was really interesting and fun. And then after 2 years, or after a year actually, then BlackBerry started really heavily starting to chase Apple, and then I just felt mad. Like, I actually don't agree to this strategy at all. Had a conversation, and then kind of said, I'm not like I'm leaving. It's better that I'm leaving. So then I left, did other things. Now I got my youth and a bit more.
Interesting. No, I think the thing that's fascinating, and I think for people that don't know, like BlackBerry was the dominant smartphone manufacturer. Like before the iPhone, everybody basically had a BlackBerry, and then everybody switched to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
iPhone over a number of years. But it was wild, like to think back to that time. Like they bought you when they were the top smartphone manufacturer globally. Is
yeah.
that fair to say?
No, totally. I mean, they were like what like Apple is today.
Yeah,
That was what they were. They were like,
totally.
if you came to a company, like if you came, they're even more extreme because nowadays, I mean, you have kind of like you have Android, you have Apple. And the
Yeah,
thing is, back then there was one smartphone manufacturer, BlackBerry,
yeah,
and then you had a lot of like Nokia had kind of like a high end smartphone, but it was like super weird. Sony Ericsson had one, it was super weird. And therefore you had the iPhone, and iPhone, like the first iPhone was a toy. Like you could read email on it. It was cool and flashy. I mean, I think we all loved it. But I mean, it's like you could take pictures with it, and like it had a semi-shitty camera, pretty fragile screen. There was something there. The thing was, the browser. It had like a super impressive browser. But I mean, back in 2007, I mean, browser on a mobile phone, it was pretty slow. It was clunky. It was still kind of, and then of course, the App Store and things took off, but it was like fun and games. And then like BlackBerry was still like they were just the player. It was like
totally.
if you came into an office, like people were just glued to their BlackBerries, and everybody used BBM. Everybody know like type with these crazy fast keyboards. And then like Apple just you know swept them off, and it was crazy, and it was like so fast. So it was very interesting to see that transition. And I mean, I saw the first year on the inside, and that was so strange to seeing the first year I was there when I started seeing that movement. I started
Yeah,
seeing company by
interesting.
company, and like Apple had launched email, and you started seeing these things like you can check your email on an iPhone, and it's for real, like not like fake, but like you can actually do it. And yeah, it was really impressive. And the thing is, at first when I was a BlackBerry, I felt they like BlackBerry is gonna do this. They're gonna figure it out. But then it just felt, no, you're trying to build an entertainment device. Like you're not trying to build the ultimate productivity device, which is your DNA BlackBerry. But now you're trying to build like a fun and games thing. And you're not fun and games. What are you doing? And that's kind of why I felt like I can't be here. I can't be in a company where I think that they're doing the wrong thing.
Oh, interesting. So I want to get into you're doing investments now with Pale Blue Dot. What types of stuff are you guys investing in? And maybe give us some examples because the companies you've been investing in are actually really innovative and cool.
Yeah, we started June last year. To start my overview quickly, we're $100 million funds. We're super early stage. I think that we're kind of the first ticket in. We usually do like $1 million for 10% of the company. So typically when they're raising like one, two, three, $4 million, like at maximum 4 million, actually, kind of that's when it's getting harder for us.
Okay.
But that's when we come in. We work super, super closely with the founders because I think that, to be frank, like all three of us have built and scaled companies. We think it's the most interesting part. And I think that if you just look at it as like capital allocation and just like you want to just print money, I don't think it's probably the smartest strategy because we're working quite a lot with the entrepreneurs, and I think that if we didn't do that, we would have a lot more time to kind of think about financy ways of multiplying money. And I think we're not. We are, of course, we're like taking our responsibility on that. But if you look at how we spend our time, we're spending our time with like making these people succeed. Which, hey, I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I think it's a probably good idea for the investment as well. But I think it's like we're spending so much time and love with these people because we just think it's so exciting. These people are doing so cool. And out of the 14, we've done so different companies. We've done like super, super, super crazy deep tech. We've done one company which is a machine learning platform that essentially figures out how you should modify and change DNA to be
Wow.
able to edit crops, so like potato and tomato and those things like that. And they figured out this super intelligent method of kind of a 3-step method when first you just do it in silicon. So like you kind of like look at the DNA and say like, the machine learning says like, oh, change this to get this feature, whatever. Like I'm very oversimplifying that, of course, but there's like essentially like a little kind of testing tool for DNA, but just in on the computer level. And then when you got that, you say, oh, these 3 candidates look like they can get the feature I want. Take those 3 things, and then you implement it like with CRISPR in the DNA of a plant. And then now they've figured out a process to verify that. So now they can like check out like how well are they corresponding to actually being able to grow in saline soil or whatever feature they want to do on this plant. And then they can say, oh, now it didn't go that well, or it's pretty good. And then they take that input and they feed it back to the machine learning system, and they can say like, so here's like, even the fail ones give data back, of course, because like if the ML said this is great and then it comes back it's not great, then it's like, oh, interesting, let's continue, like now we have more input on what works. And then what they next do is then they start breeding plants, and when they breed plants they do it in a super smart method where they get like lots and lots of data about the breeding, and they can feed in that data to the machine learning algorithm again in steps. So now like every loop they do, they just get like essentially do better and better kind of DNA search on plants. And then they can implement and create, and they can create like crazy that you can't imagine, or maybe that you can imagine. But what they can do is implement stuff which is just totally groundbreaking. So they can make a thing that they like, there's just, and these small things that you don't know about. So like there's a certain kind of salad where it's kind of sprouts small flowers essentially,
Okay.
and which is a pretty common salad in like and if you go to like Whole Foods or something. And the thing is, when these small flowers bud, they're pretty bitter. So what happens in the store is like when they see those flower budding, or actually they don't see them, they just see they've been there for 3 days, they just toss all the bags out because now they know they start tasting bitter, and you don't want them because then people are going to say the salad starts bitter. So then they just edit out the fact that they bud flowers. So then like you have a sterile kind of salad that never sprouts these, and of course that just doubles the shelf life of this salad. So of course less waste, better margins, blah blah. But then they've done lots of these super cool stuff. So they've done tomatoes that are optimized for robot picking and just like improves the yield massively and reduces the watering of plants. They've done a potato that doesn't bruise. So like there's so much waste in the
Wow.
production of potatoes, and now these don't bruise anymore. So like this is like a crazy deep tech company, and like but then we've done other companies. We've done a company that takes algae and seaweed. And like one of the founders is a super algae expert, made a documentary films about algae and algae farming. And the other founder is like a food scientist, super versed in taste and feel and kind of quality about food and mouthfeel. And then they take these algae, choose certain algae species, choose certain parts of that algae, and then use a couple of different fermentation steps. And one of their products is a kind of a canned tuna, but like it's obviously not tuna, but it's like this algae-based tuna. And the crazy thing about it, it is canned tuna. Like if you and like the first time they send us these kind of like triangle sandwiches with corn, vegan mayo, and this tuna. I had a bite in it and just spit it out immediately. I was like, send us tuna sandwiches, the idiots. And then like it literally like took me a couple of seconds to kind of pick this apart, look at it again. I was like, maybe it is tuna. Is it tuna? And like took another bite. Just like, I think it's. And like my two colleagues were sitting there like chewing on this, and we're like, I don't think it's tuna, but it's so close. I can't really. I mean, it's like it tasted great, but the question is, it tastes great, but is it tuna? And it was like canned tuna. It was so cool. And then the cool thing about this is that when you grow seaweed in the ocean, you suck down lots of carbon, you increase biodiversity in the ocean, you create lots of interesting local jobs actually. And then for people, when you eat seaweed, it's really good for health, and they have a lot of benefits. As less a lot of the things that because tuna is like they're huge fishes, so they eat smaller fishes, and those smaller fishes eat smaller fishes. Those smaller fishes can eat stuff that contains mercury and other things, so they kind of compound a lot of bad stuff. Of course, algae doesn't have that; it doesn't eat other things, so it's like actually healthier for you. It contains a lot of super small stuff, especially for vegans, like B vitamin and omega-3 and stuff. So it's really good for people. And then the third aspect is you're not killing tuna. Like you're not slaughtering, big animals. And the other cool, crazy thing is like when you're actually killing tuna, you're driving around with massive, like don't care about your pickup now. Like think about the size of these boats, which are running around with an open freezer. So like they're driving out of the sea with fossil fuel, just fuming right out with an open freezer, and they're just tossing in the tunas in this freezer. So like if you ever keep your freezer open, you're like, oh, I'm an environmental enemy. Yeah. I mean, look at what these boats are doing live every day. So the crazy thing is like this company is one of those, like it just checks all the boxes, like from the first thing to the bite. It is, and those companies, like they're sometimes we have like investors who ask us like, or other investors like, yeah, how do you know if something is a climate company? And we're like, yeah, I'll tell you. Just like when you meet these people, and the thing is the founders are, of course, that's another thing. It's like the founders in the portfolio, they're just like these like massive kind of climate people, which is, it's amazing. It's one of the founders is like, she decided she's going to offset a lot of the stuff she's doing. So we talked to her about that when we invested, and it's like, what are you doing? What kind of offsetting are you doing? Like when we say offsetting, by the way, it's like suck down carbon from the sky. We don't think you should buy like offsets, like this kind of financial products, but like how do you like create negative emissions for what your like emissions are? And she says, oh, I'm planting forest. And we're like, oh, okay. Like, are you buying forest planting? Forest planting is not necessarily really, really good. It has a lot of drawbacks actually for climate. And she says like, no, I plant forest. I'm like, oh, how do you do that? So I got this lot of land and like nowhere land, and I just like plant lots of forest there and let that be. And I'm like, you're taking this quite seriously. Like
That's amazing.
like just so amazing. Exactly. So these people are just amazing. And then like another complete angle is one company in the US called Sphere. They're building a fossil-free 401k. So the crazy thing about your 401k plan right now is that the 401k, I mean, like you go to a company, they're saving for your pension, and I mean, they're saving for a rainy day, right? Or like, your future. The crazy thing is that we don't really think about that rainy day is like, a level 5 hurricane probably. Like we're not realizing that we're saving for a day where the planet's, and the scary thing about it is that the way your savings are saved, they're invested, is like in fossil fuels. Like there's a lot of your pension funding is essentially destroying your own and your kids' future. So if you're working for, the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, whatever, these are huge employers. And like all of these 401ks, it's just crazy amount of fossil fuel money. And when you go to like, your 401k provider and say, hey, we want to do one on fossil fuel, these people are just immediately like quack, quack, quack. Like, you increase like the risk, you're indexing over a smaller part of the portfolio, blah, blah, blah. And I think anybody of us would say, I would prefer to index of a smaller part if you remove the idiot stuff, right? And not only like idiot because I feel bad about it, but I think fossil fuels are going to go down. I don't think they're a very valuable stock on a like 20, 40-year perspective, like when I'm going to retire. So I think that it's just crazy when you go like, and then you say, can I remove this? And they say, yeah, sure, we're gonna add another, like, 60 to 120 base points. You're like, whoa, but then, it doesn't matter that much, because then, like, I mean, then, like, there are a lot of money are gonna disappear in fees. And I'm like, yeah, but this is really complicated. And the cool thing with Sphere is it's not complicated. They designed by this amazing, super simple product, super easy to use. You literally just go to your employer and say, hey, I want to use Sphere. Onesphere.com. Can you check it out? And they are obliged to add it. Like any company is not, like, they're obliged to add
Amazing.
most, at least. So then you just go and then you just say, hey, I want to move my money into this. And now all your, like, the pension money you're doing, your 401k, is no longer destroying the planet. So, like, it's
Wow.
this, that's of course a completely different product, right? So this is the fun thing about our job, is like you have to get in and get, like, how does, like, CRISPR editing and DNA editing, machine learning work? How do we harvest, algae and seaweed, and how do you ferment it, and how do you make consumer packaged goods, and how do you get those into Whole Foods in the world? Or, like, how does the pension system work? And it's pretty exciting, but it's like there are days when I feel like, oh, I really, like, would like to just sit down, but there's
That's
gonna
amazing.
it is a lot of fun.
So you've been through obviously getting acquired by a large company. You've
Mhm.
invested in, I think if I remember correctly, 150 plus companies at this point in your career. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So, what advice do you give to people when they're potentially going to get acquired, and what things do they need to think about? Because I've gone through it. It's
Mhm.
daunting. It's scary. You kind of
Mm.
outlined how you were feeling when BlackBerry was acquiring you. So, what are your thoughts around that, and advice around that, and anything else we could talk about around that?
Yeah. So first thing I would say is, like, I just think you should never start a company, or, like, design the way your company is built to be acquired. Like, I mean, I think that if you do,
Okay.
you're doomed. Like, it's just like, if like, I don't know, I mean, how many founders I meet who said, like, we're making this booking platform for cleaners, and it's, like, super, super smart. And you look at Airbnb, they definitely need it. So the plan is, like, to flip it to them within 2 years. I think that the problem for most people they don't really get is that it is kind of like you knowing, it is kind of like, like, we know that my friend is getting married on Saturday, and we're gonna, like, make the biggest, badassest, like, birthday cake you can ever imagine, and we're, like, gonna do this crazy thing. What the thing you haven't thought about is that they sure know about their wedding way more than you have. Like, if you think about
Right.
Airbnb's problems and you're not really, really, really on the inside, they know that too. And the other thing is, like, when your cake is ready, well, it takes a lot of years to build an impressive company that is acquirable. So the thing is that when your cake is ready, well, the wedding's long gone. So it
Right.
is really hard to
Interesting.
plan these things. Like, you can't just say, "Ooh, I think this can be acquired." So I think what I think people, and you can always, like, there are opportunistic stuff people do, which is like, you can say, oh, there needs to be a solution for the dark kitchen people. They need to figure out this and that. But now you're not targeting, like, you're not targeting a like, vendor. You're saying, like, this is a phenomenon, and I think that kind of works. It works to say, but then I think that you're back into building a product and a company of a problem. Like, you're not thinking about being acquired. You're saying, listen, like, look at how the e-scooter companies are looking at battery maintenance. And then you, like, you go and try to figure that out. And you realize none of them have this problem, like, have figured it out.
Ah,
It's a bit of a nascent problem for them, but you see this growing and you realize this problem is going to be huge. Like, how the heck are they going to manage recycling of batteries? And then you talk to them and they say, we started doing it. And you're like, how do you do it? It sucks. So then you realize, I don't care if it's like, Uber or Lime or one of these people who are going to acquire us, or they're going to be our customers. Or, we're going to be acquired by PG&E who needs them the other end. What, I don't know. But the thing is, it's clearly a problem. So then let's go build it and solve it. And let's build an empire on this. And then, you know, when we're an empire, then maybe somebody says, hey, we'd love you to be part of our. And then it's like, yeah. And so I think that's the first thing, is like, I would just never design and build a company for, like, having the plan in mind. Um, it's kind of like, Columbus saying, I'm, sailing to the West Indies. It's like, yeah, yeah, you go, man. It's just like, it's not there. There's another thing in between. Um, it's kind of hard to predict. The other thing is, I think that the way I view acquisitions is, like, when you're growing a company, I really love thinking about essentially stall points. So you think like these S curves, like when you grow a company, first it goes like boom really quickly, and then suddenly it's just like go slower and stalls and it's complicated. And then these S curves are essentially mounted on each other. And, like, when you come to this point where it's a plateau, it's like that's the point, like what I like calling the stall point here, when it stalls, and you feel like, and if, like, that S curve might be, I mean, let's say that you're this battery recycling company, like, that might be number of batteries you recycle, whatever. So like you see it just grows like crazy, and then suddenly it starts to plateau. And like, why doesn't it grow as fast? Like we're not increasing new batteries as fast as we wanted. And when you're at that point, you have to ask, you have three choices. Like either you just grid it out, and you're like, yeah, we just launched in like Mexico and Canada, so like we just have to get that market up and running. I just spend time, just like bite the bullet, just like work hard and like get your head down. Or you realize like we have to acquire something. Like we have to acquire either you have to acquire, and I think you can acquire usually three things. When you're a small company, you don't have these choices, but you can acquire essentially IP, like some tech, which is like makes the thing for you. Like maybe you can measure the recycling better or something.
Right.
Or you acquire know-how, just require people and like like we make this product better. Or you acquire channel, like you essentially acquire so that now we get into a new market. And if those are essentially the three things you acquire, like, or usually the problem is like if you acquire a company, you usually get one of those three things, and the problem is like you kind of mess up at least one of the other. Because like if you're buying a company which has amazing product and amazing team, it's very unlikely you have that customer as they do. So you're probably going to toss away their channel, for example. And if you have a company, doing whatever referral system for something which is like, for auto sales, whatever, and you're like a big auto manufacturer buying them, I mean, you're going to buy their channel, their product. Like, come on, guys, we don't need it to be flexible. Like, we're the only auto manufacturer you're going to work with. So you end up tossing something usually. So when you get to this stall point, then the second choice is like, okay, you acquire yourself out of that problem. You get new market or whatever, new product. Then the third choice is that you get acquired. So like, I feel like when you get to that stall point, you ask yourself like, how do we continue having this explosive like 20-30% month to month growth or whatever, like depending on the age of the company, right? And that's like, I don't know what's going to do it. Like we need to get into Spain, we need to get like northern Africa, like how are we going to get there? And you're looking at acquire there, and like you're figuring out. Sometimes then you just bump into somebody who's like, we just met the biggest Spanish company in this process, and they know everything about this. They have all of Brazil and South America. They know all. So like maybe we should just be part of them instead. And then when you do that, then like that's maybe the easier process for you than trying to acquire Telefonica or whoever you're talking to. So then I think those are kind of the three choices. And I would say that, so the way I view it is like you kind of build to last. You build it to solve a big problem, and you grow this company and you're trying to fix it. And as you grow that company, you might just get to a point where you realize, either it's getting acquired or it's acquiring, and then either it is, or it's just gritting it out. And I think if you realize that I don't think that you should just say, okay, we will be acquired. But I think sometimes you realize that this is just like, it doesn't make any sense to kind of try to acquire yourselves out of this, but so we should get acquired. And then I think the way I look at it is I try to look at it as the acquiree or the acquirer, sorry. So I try to think about it like if I'm Cisco or Google or whoever, I would look at it as like, so what are we to them? Are we a product that if they add their product, they will multiply this? Are we channel for them? Are we just pure IP that they will put in the box? What are we for them? Are we a new market? And I think that a lot of people imagine their own product to be amazing, and then you just don't need to if Google just acquired us and roll this feature out of Gmail, it would be great for them. Well, guess what? Google have some other priorities, so it's probably not their biggest thing. But sometimes you can actually have those things where it's like, I mean, kind of what YouTube was for Google, right? It's like
Totally, yeah.
they search the internet, but they don't search video. So like, if there's any way where you can get them to become video, I don't think the YouTube founders thought, oh, we could help them search videos. That was clearly not what was happening, right? But I think that sometimes you just end up in these relationships where like, oh my God, like we could actually multiply this for them. What I've found, what happens then usually is like, I would say there's like there's a very low probability that you have that match. But what I think is really good is that what you end up doing is that you end up like you try to meet them. And the interesting thing I find is that the M&A people of the company are super easy to find. Like you literally search like M&A Cisco or whatever, and you can talk to them. I usually find it so much better if you have them as a customer, you know them, you kind of work with them, they know what you are. But if you don't, if you just go, I mean, I've had companies where I invested in where we realized that this doesn't work. The team is a total dream team, but we just can't get the CAC down. This is just way too expensive to acquire customers. But the product it's cool, but it's more impressive than it's something. Then you just realize, okay, this is going to be an acquire. Like we're just going to try to get like acquired for us being smart. Done. We will use the product and the current customers as a proof point. Like whoever buys us, they will not care about this, but they will look at us as 6 amazing machine learning people within biology or whatever. And then you just go out and it's like, who are the list? You talk to them and try to figure out. And if you're that, then sometimes you actually can approach the M&A people and just say, hey, we're 9 people, like 7, PhDs in biology and machine learning. Like I'm product manager, blah, blah, blah before. I would love to kind of figure out if there's a fit. We realize that we're kind of in the road on taking customers and we don't want to do around. Yes, we have American visas, like all of the things that you realize that they're going to say, no, we can't acquire you. We don't want a company in country X. But if they realize that this won't be a headache for them, then the M&A people, they're usually super fast. They just go, wow, interesting, like great, like 7 PhDs in this, that's great. Let me ping a product manager. They usually book a call, they go through with it with you, and then they discuss it and they figure out. But that is because if you're selling know-how and people, it's fairly easy. I mean, they're going to look at you as hiring, and then it's fairly easy to assess. If you're selling product, like if you're selling, like, look at our product, this is great, that's way more complicated because then, I mean, you're kind of coming with a wedding cake to somebody's wedding. You have to make sure it fits. So a friend of mine got acquired by Apple many years ago. They had a face recognition software to like, and well, you know where it is now for Apple, right? But back then,
Amazing. Yeah.
they made like this kind of toy thing where it found faces in pictures and were able to, like, you helping build automatic albums for picture albums. It was kind of a toyish thing, but very impressive technology. And
That's
then,
cool.
it was really cool. They got they got to meet Apple. They got this great meeting, and then Apple looked at us and like, yeah, like they came there and pitched like you could auto generate, photo albums on the iPhone. I think Apple was like, yeah, well. They got on the airplane back. I was like, they had like they connected with the Apple people, but it was like clear this wasn't the thing that Apple, got excited about. So on the airplane back, the two of them started talking about what would actually connect to Apple. And then on the plane back, they started like, going through different, we could build a product that did this and, found faces for security. We could do this and that. And then they kind of almost like immediately when they got home, they kind of built a bit of a prototype, kind of what we did. Like they build this prototype of like face recognition to be able to figure out if you are you for the phone. You would hold up the phone in front of you, it would recognize your face. Yeah, let's try that. Like email up and said, hey, great meeting in Cupertino. Would love to talk to you. And by the way, we thought a bit about this. Do you want to check this feature? Apple was like, yeah, we were super impressed by the meeting. Like, you want to swing by Tuesday next week, right? Came back, demoed this. Apple sat there. It was a bit lukewarm, but like, yeah, they were like them. We were impressed by what they did. One more time, get on the airplane back, sit and talk about it, come up with another cool idea. They prototype this, pings Apple, gets back to Cupertino. This third call, Apple's sitting there like, or meeting, they're sitting there talking, and they're like, yeah, all of these things are cool. But I mean, none of them are like the thing that would make us, jump and say, we got to do this. But we're very impressed by what you did. And your technology obviously handles a lot of different use cases. So yeah, we'd like to acquire. And it's so funny because like, they kind of flex their muscles and demo all they did, right? But at the end of the day, I think that, I usually try to say, like, I think about acquisitions kind of like when you're hiring. For me, acquisitions, like when I'm hiring people, I'm saying like there's 3 skills I want. There's, of course, you need to know, if you're going to be a molecular biologist, you probably have to know molecular biology. But other than that, there's 3 super important things for me, which is, smart, get done, and nice. And what I mean by those things are get done is just like, hey, could you look at this day after you've done it, or could you go through this thing? Yeah, sure. By the 2 weeks later, you've done it, and like you just see that they take on a task and they solve it, and they're not like, because most people on the planet they're like, oh, I don't like working. But if you like meet people, like they just get done,
Yeah, that's
and there's
fair.
just and it's like it doesn't have to be the best. It's just like they just they do. That's great. And then the second thing about being nice for me is like, would I hang out with them? Like, if I share a transatlantic plane, would I enjoy their company? um, Stuff like that. And I feel like that's super important because, great people attract other great people, and nobody really want to work with jerks and so on and so forth. And then the third thing, smart. Smart for me isn't like, IQ and math skills and can they play chess in the dark or whatever. The thing for me is like, do they solve problems when they don't know the solution? How do they
Interesting.
handle like ambiguity, uncertainty? How do they go about a problem? Do they call 10 people? Do they open up a spreadsheet? Do they kind of draw stuff? And like just there are a lot of people when you say, "Hey, we have this headache," and they say, "Yeah, tell me what to do." You're like, "I don't know. Like, we don't know how to do it." And they're just like, "Yeah, but just tell me what to do." And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know." And then, I mean, there are a lot of great people, but the thing is, they don't know how to tackle when you don't tell them, take these things, write
Yeah.
your name in the corner, staple them, sort them like this. And so then the thing for me is like when people can handle, you don't know what's coming, they get stuff done, and you're nice to hang out with. That's amazing. And that's exactly what happened to my friend. I mean, after 3 meetings with Apple, I mean, I wasn't in the room where it happened, but I think Apple kind of felt, you're nice people. Like, it's nice talking to you. We like you. You're smart. I mean, these things are impressive, the things you build. And you built them in 4 weeks. You get it done. So then you kind of feel, if you're in the choir, you're sitting there going, you're like, yeah, why wouldn't we own these people, right? And then, of course, like, it kind of is like acquiring a company is really complicated because you meet the founders, they're super exciting, the product is great, but I mean, they have 28 other people in, in London or Romania or Texas, whatever they have, and those people might hate shit out of you, or like there's so many things that you don't know, right? So like you have to kind of figure out about like you have to talk to the whole team, and the problem is usually you can't really talk to the whole team because you're going to spook out, when the team knows, the customer knows, so then I do this. So there's a lot of like, kind of like you usually have to figure that out in an elegant way, which is complicated.
Sure. Well, and the fascinating thing is it's all stuff that you don't think about as an entrepreneur, what it's like actually buying that company, right? That's an
No, it's
interesting
exactly,
perspective.
yeah. No, it is really wild because I mean, when you're like, I would say that M&A is a very strange profession. It's like I mean, I think every profession has its really quirky stuff, but I think
Sure.
that M&A was such a strange thing doing because M&A is like you're not doing most weeks. You just don't do anything. Like absolutely nothing happens because I mean, you do not want to go and acquire companies all the time, right? So like
Right.
you're just essentially, you know, whatever. You just like reading books. Like there's just nothing you can do which makes any sense. I mean, I'm serious on the level of like you just don't do anything. Like you just think and then you pretend that yeah, I'm thinking about strategy work or whatever, but I mean you don't know. And the thing that is really tricky then is that what also happens is that suddenly on Tuesday, like the CEO comes in or you have this massive board meeting or a management meeting, whatever, and they realize we need to buy this company now. And then you just have to work until it's done. So like
Right.
you just work night and day to get it done. And then suddenly it's done. And now you have to integrate them and onboard them and like get a good vibes from everybody and check in and get feedback and a lot of stuff. And now suddenly they're in and everything's great. It's been whatever, 6 months, a year, I don't know, it depends on, what kind of company it is. And now you're just sitting there like, okay, what now? And then you just don't. Okay. So the weird thing is like you can't almost have like a regular thing you do because the headache is if you do, then you're toast when you're suddenly going to try to acquire a company. So most of the time you just have to kind of have a super flexible schedule and just throw it out any second if needed. And that's just like it's such a strange situation. I think that's it's weirded me out a lot because I really like working and getting stuff done. So for me, just like just waiting for stuff, it just makes me really like it just like I don't like that feeling. So like it was so interesting. And then, when the thing comes, then you have to act. And then the crazy thing as well is that in M&A, just constant emails from VCs who are like, we have this great opportunity for you that when they're like, this is a thing that only for you. And like one of my M&A colleagues at BlackBerry said, how do you know, how do you know if a VC is lying? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like, they're moving their lips. Because it's just like, these people are just like, they're so full of, they just like, everything is, they're like the worst combination of a realtor and a car salespeople. They just call you and they just tell you these things. Oh, this company is going great, but we're just thinking if maybe they're being a better home at your place. There's long runway. The founders are super keen, super motivated. And you're like, so why are you calling me to sell them? And like, no, I'm not interested in selling. I just want to like put them on your radar. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it is kind of a strange, and you go to like when you go to conferences, anybody knows you're coming, they're just going up to you and like, hey, I'm working this super cool product. You want to see my iPhone app? And I'm like, no, like just leave me alone. So it is really strange. And then when it happens, right? When you go like, I really want to acquire this, then you're just like, whoa, it happens. So it is a really, really strange job. And it took me like after like 6 months, I got used to it and
Sure.
understood what's going on. And it of course depends how big there actually is part of M&A where it is super clear what you're doing because like if you're building whatever you're building kind of a telemedicine company like some kind of something what it is and you just need to buy clinics in different countries to be able to get in then
Right.
it's easy then you're just like list of all companies, list of all blah, 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 trawl through, check the revenue of them, check the size, check the cities, call this, CEO, and then you're just machine buying. And that's like, that definitely happens for certain companies. And then if you're one of those, when you're being called, like, it's so different than if you're like that unique super component. So like for example, most of these big companies like the Apples and Googles and Metas and all of these, they usually have the investment people or sometimes tied to the hip to the M&A people. So like you're sitting in the same office or same boat. So you end up like, you look at this thing like, oh, we found this crazy like virtual reality antenna glove, blah blah blah, and like you look at M&A like, what the am I gonna do with it? Like, this is just crazy. But then you turn like you go to the M&A people or like the investment people, like, we met this like virtuality thing, and it's like, it's not really there, but I think it's like I think it fits our strategy. Like, I get why they pitched us, right? Do you want to talk to them? Because maybe you want to invest. And then the investment people, well, it's like, sure, and they talk to them, and then they invest. The funny thing is, a lot of those things you end up later acquiring because, of course, you did the investment because it wasn't on strategy, right? And then you didn't have. And the funny thing is, who are you negotiating with? Yeah, exactly, your colleague who's an asshole who now wants to get like some bonus. So like we did that one of those deals where BlackBerry were like, they invested in, or we them invested in this super cool antenna thing, and then later we acquired them, and we acquired them from kind of ourselves, and it was just so stupid. We're like, I'm not going to pay a premium price unit, and the other good dude is like, hey, this is my bonus. It's like our price. It's like, no, come on. It was such a strange thing. But the M&A people are usually easier to approach than the investment arm.
Interesting.
So
I think that's actually really good advice, but sadly, we're out of time. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself, Pale Blue Dot, and any other links you want to mention?
Yeah, so Pale Blue Dot is at Pale Blue and then .vc, as in .com, but .vc. So you don't spell out the dot. And then I am at Twitter is probably the easiest, which is HAJAK. I also like blog random stuff, but I think that usually easily to find. Yeah, I think I'm pretty easy to approach. Like if people tweet me or anything, and they're not just trying to get me to sell tokens or airdrop tokens to them, then I usually just reply to them.
Perfect, Hampus. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.